Hello, this is David Stringer, publisher of Prescott E-News. Welcome to another segment of Prescott Talks. We're very honored here today at Prescott Talks to have a distinguished guest, Marc Victor, who is a candidate for the United States Senate, running against Blake Masters and our incumbent, Mark Kelly. And anyway, this is, I think, your first visit to our studio, Mark, and I want to welcome you to Prescott E-News. And thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for having me. It's such an honor to be here.
All right, well, let's cut right to the chase. We don't have a whole lot of time, so let's make good use of that time. I believe this is your first run for political office.
Actually, it's my second.
It is your second,
I ran 10 years ago against Jeff Flake and Rich Carmona.
Wow, okay. Well,
Yeah.
There's nothing like starting at the top.
There you go.
Tell me, though, a little bit about your professional background. I believe you are an attorney. You practice criminal law down in the Phoenix area. Could you tell us just a little bit about your professional background and how you got drawn into the Libertarian Party?
Well, I guess I should start by saying I'm a really proud former United States Marine, and I served in Desert Storm, so I'm a combat vet, and that shaped a lot about who I am. And my law firm that I started, we call it the Attorneys for Freedom, because I think that my business should stand for something more than making money. I'm not against making money. I'm a capitalist. I think people should make as much money as they are proud of making, and I'm proud of making every dime that I make. But money's not the most important thing to me. So our firm's called the Attorneys for Freedom. We stand for something. We promote a free society, and the lawyers who I hire, they don't have to agree with everything I say, but they got to be pro-freedom. We're activist attorneys at my firm.
Mark, can I ask you about how long you've been doing that? And you say we stand for something, we're attorneys for freedom. Do you take public interest cases? I know you do some criminal work. Do you take public interest cases? Do you do some pro bono work? How does this reflect? Attorneys for Freedom, how does this reflect in your practice?
Yeah, well, I'm a criminal defense lawyer for 28 years now, and I handle mostly major felonies, everything from the federal courts down to the local city courts, and we also do appeals. I've been to the Ninth Circuit several times. In terms of our activism—
So you're doing both state and federal
State
law.
and federal, yeah. I've done lots of both. I do mostly everything from first-degree murder all the way down the chain, but most of what I'm doing these days is major felonies. In terms of our activism, we had a really fun case during the Corona lockdowns. Goldwater Institute refers cases to me sometimes that have a freedom aspect to it. We say we do it sometimes just for the freedom of it. And we took a case, it was a high profile case. We represented Euro Pizza up in Flagstaff, and they were basically charged with failing to shoo people away who were eating during the period of time when Governor Ducey had said it's only takeout. And we got that case successfully dismissed. So
that's interesting. I think I heard about that case. So, and you accepted that case on referral from the Goldwater Institute, which is a sort of a libertarian think tank here in Arizona. There's a number of organizations that have attorneys. You know, they don't have them on staff, but they have them. You know, the Justice Institute. There's the Reason Justice, Foundation. Right. A number of kind of think tanks, conservative, libertarian-oriented think tanks around the country have sort of lawyers on call locally for cases that come up. And I take it you're one of those lawyers.
I'm one of those guys. And so Goldwater, they know me very well. I've worked with Institute for Justice. In fact, when Clint Bolick, who's now a Supreme Court justice, when he first came to Arizona, he was with Institute for Justice, and we hooked up right away.
So you know Clint Bolick.
I know
Justice Bolick now. Yeah.
I know Justice Bolick, and I have nothing but respect for him. He's a wonderful. I was thrilled when he got on the Arizona Supreme Court.
As was I. I knew him when he was with the Goldwater Institute, and I was for a very brief time. I served with his wife in the Arizona State Legislature, so I'm very familiar with Justice Bolick's thinking. I believe he's a member of the Federalist Society and sort of a strict interpretation of the Constitution kind of a guy. And I relate to that, and I can see you do as well.
In fact, when we renamed our firm the Attorneys for Freedom from Marc J. Victor PC, because it was at the beginning really just me, Justice Bolick actually came to my law firm and gave a speech about how important the work that my law firm is for the state of Arizona. I was very honored by that.
I can understand why you would be honored. I think anybody would be honored. All right, Mark, let's turn to the election itself. This is turning out, I believe, and I haven't, I wasn't born in Arizona, but I've been here a while, one of the most contested and most expensive Senate races, I think, in the history of this state. I remember when John McCain was running and J.D. Hayworth ran against him, but I don't know that those kind of campaigns were the most expensive we've had. This one seems to be a campaign of national interest, huge amount of money pouring into the state of Arizona for our major parties, our Republican and our Democrat. How does a Libertarian run in that kind of a field and that kind of an environment? We've got a huge amount of money coming in. How does a Libertarian sort of maintain their own and get their ideas out?
It's actually really fun for me because I don't have, tens of millions of dollars. And so I don't try to compete on that level. You're not going to see signs that say vote for Marc or buttons or things like that, or even commercials. I like to say I'm just a guy with much better ideas. And so I think the power of ideas is important. I think that's what we need right now in America. I do think that the race for United States Senate here in Arizona is big. This is a huge moment, really in American history, but I'm up to something much bigger. I'm not looking just for votes. I want to win people's hearts and minds for a revolution in how we think about politics and government and how we human beings should interact with each other. I think we need a global revolution because that's our community now. Whether we like it or not, we got to think about global threats, global issues. The world has changed. And so it's bigger than just this election. We got to get the reasonable people of the world to coalesce around some ideas that let people who have different views kind of get along.
All right, let's explore that a little bit. Let's touch on some of these ideas because at this stage of the campaign, it's all about sound bites. It's all about negative commercials and things of that nature. And I don't believe you're doing any of that. I haven't seen any of that coming out of the Marc Victor campaign.
Absolutely nothing, no.
Your campaign has been about and is about ideas, and I'd like to explore that a little bit. Most voters know about what the Republican Party stands for in a general way, what the Democratic Party stands for in a general way, but they don't always know what does the Libertarian Party stand for. Everybody claims to stand for freedom and liberty. Could you give us some of the ideas behind the Libertarian Party and maybe some of the influences on you, some of the books you've read, some of the officials, some of the elected officials who've influenced you, some of the political thinkers of our time who have influenced you? Could you kind of flesh out the ideas behind the Libertarian Party?
Yeah, let me first say I'm a bit of a lone wolf. I don't, as I said in the debate, I don't kiss anybody's ring. And so I do my own thinking. And so my preference would have been to run as an independent because I know people have preconceived ideas about libertarians and I didn't want any of that baggage. Not that I'm trying to disassociate from the Libertarian Party, but there's a Libertarian Party and anybody can join it no matter what they believe. It's a political party. But what makes the Libertarians different than the other two parties is there's a Libertarian philosophy that underlies the Libertarian Party. Not all people in the Libertarian Party espouse the Libertarian philosophy. I'm a big fan of the Libertarian philosophy. And as Ronald Reagan...
what is that? That's what we're trying to get at here.
Yeah, happy to get into it. But I'll note Ronald Reagan said that libertarianism is the heart and soul of the Republican Party.
I remember
so
that.
Really, libertarianism could be best described with the phrase, live and let live. The idea is that people should be in charge of their own lives, right? You're in charge of your body, your money, your property, your time. In the libertarian axiom is called the non-aggression principle. And basically what this means is nobody should have a right to aggress against another person. Of course, aggression, we as criminal defense lawyers have a pretty good understanding, but I break it down for people to say nobody gets to initiate force against another person or their property, or to engage in fraud or in coercion, or to do anything that we lawyers would say puts another person or their property at a substantial risk of harm. Said as a non-lawyer, nobody gets to put another person in danger. So if you do that, the proper action of government is to stop them from doing that. If they've already done that, well, we give you a fair trial. But if it turns out you did that, you should be punished.
So, Marc, let me just interrupt right there to try to maybe elaborate on that thought a little bit. Libertarians are sometimes thought of people who are anti-government.
Yeah.
Republicans are accused of or actually profess to be small government advocates. Libertarians sometimes take that a step further. They're sometimes called anarchists. They advocate, kind of a minimal government kind of thing and kind of a rugged individualist philosophy. But what I hear you saying is that there's a very important role for government, and that is protecting people from the aggression of others, coercion, exploitation of other people. So there is a role for government. And how big is that role?
Is as big as is needed to do the one thing it should be doing, which is stopping aggression. It's accurate to say I'm anti-aggression. I'm pro everything else. And that doesn't mean personally I like everything else, but I respect the rights of other people to live their lives however they choose, so long as they're not aggressing. And so the government can act as our agent to do what we could do ourselves, which is stop people from aggressing. I, of course, have a right in self-defense to stop people from aggressing against me. I also have a right to help other people. It's called defense of a third party. I can act to protect you against aggression as well. Or we can together hire somebody, call it the government or private security, to defend each of us.
So let's make that a little bit more concrete now in the context of this political campaign for the United States Senate. How do you differ? How does your libertarian thinking or your platform differ from what the Republicans are saying and what the Democrats are saying?
This is my favorite question because I like to talk about how we're different. And here's what I say.
You've got the floor.
Both the Republicans and the Democrats have ideas about how people should live. Both of them are happy to impose those ideas on other people. What's radically different about me is, while I have ideas about how you should live, and if you ask me, I'll give you my opinion, I am not trying to put my ideas into the law. So whatever you ask me about my personal positions on issues, I'm going to tell you it doesn't matter what my personal positions is. My political position is always the same. Nobody gets to impose on other people how they should live. The only thing we get to say is nobody gets to infringe on anybody else's rights to live however they want to live. And so everything that I say will be entirely consistent with what libertarians call the non-aggression principle, but what I would call the live and let live legal principle.
Marc, could you mention some of the influences on you? So if people want to learn more about libertarian thinking, where do they go? And before you answer that question, let me tell you that I have a little personal familiarity with libertarianism. I lived back in Washington for much of my career and used to go to the libertarian conventions, which were held at the Hyatt Hotel in Washington, D.C., at least for some time back in the late 90s. Met Harry Brown, who'd been the presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party, knew folks who belonged to the Cato Institute. I may have actually been a member myself of the Cato Institute at one time and read a lot of conservative literature. Could you tell the viewers a little bit about how did you come to these ideas and what books or thinkers influenced you?
Well, I think a lot of people really are libertarians and don't know it, right? These are the people who sort of take offense that other people would tell them how to run their lives. And I was one of those guys, and I landed as you might say I was a pro-Ronald Reagan, pro-Rush Limbaugh type of a Republican until I got to law school and I ran into a professor named Butler Schaefer. And he really deconstructed everything I believed. And he got me thinking down the road of some of these authors that you would talk about. I would cite to, first there's a lot of economists, right? Murray Rothbard is somebody who's very popular in libertarian literature. Milton Friedman.
Mr. Hayek with The Road to Serfdom.
Friedrich Hayek and The Road to Serfdom I thought was an excellent book. I encourage people to read. Henry Hazlitt, who wrote Economics in One Lesson. One of my favorite economists who's still around, Walter Block, who wrote a really fun book called Defending the Undefendable. Also Ludwig von Mises, who wrote a giant treatise called Human Action, which I did not get all the way through. That's some heavy sledding. But there's a very heavy free market economics, pro-capitalist type bent in the libertarian world. And all I say is, look, if you don't aggress against other people, what is left is a free market economy. That's the reason I'm for a free market economy, because nobody is aggressing. Socialism, or at least forced socialism, where I'm saying, look, I'm going to take your money and spend it on something I think is important. That's the kind of thing that we libertarians would say, look, it might be important, but it's your money. I got to convince you to spend it on something. I don't get to take your money. But once we cross that, now we're arguing about you want to take my money, I want to take your money. We should stop doing that.
Marc, how does one become a member of the Libertarian Party? a lot of people don't know how you do this, but it's really quite simple. Go ahead and
you just
tell us.
register as a libertarian and you are a member of the party, which is part of the problem because people will connect the Libertarian Party with the libertarian philosophy. And anybody can join the party, even if they're not really a libertarian. So I'm a real libertarian.
Being a libertarian, being a member of the Libertarian Party is simply a matter of registering. It's one of the options voters have here in Arizona and probably most other places. You can register as a Democrat or a Republican or an independent or a Libertarian or a Green Party member. You don't have to get anybody's permission or go to party meetings or anything of that sort. You could just register as a Libertarian if you so choose. Marc, we're running out of time in this segment, so I want to give you an opportunity to connect with the voters and the viewers and sort of put your thoughts in a minute. If I give you a minute to just kind of do a close, the floor is yours.
Let me be bold enough to say this. I believe with very good confidence, if everybody knew everything about what I was saying and what the other two candidates were saying, I would win in a landslide. So I invite you, go to my political website, liveandletliverevolution.com. See what I'm saying there. And if you like that, visit the bigger project, which is the Live and Let Live Global Peace Movement, which is liveandletlive.org. See if the two principles we lay out there, the legal principle, don't be an aggressor, and the moral principle, which we didn't talk about yet, be a good human, things I want to convince people. We need to say some things about morality. See what we're saying there. If you like what we're saying, check the box that says, I'm now a member of this peace movement and let's change the world together.
Marc, thank you so much for coming in. I think we have more to talk about. I'm going to ask you to come back for another segment and maybe get down to some concrete issues that are of moment in this particular campaign. But thank you so much for coming in. This has been David Stringer, publisher of Prescott E-News, with another edition of Prescott Talks. Thanks for watching.